So after bending your 90 degrees in your piece of conduit, at the tip mark out a ½ inch for where your shop light chain will be. Next, take an awl and push the awl down so you'll have a point to guide the drill bit so the drill bit does not dance. Then you can take a multi-purpose bit or a metal cutting bit and drill through one side of the conduit. Do not drill through both sides of the conduit. Next, you'll want to remove any stickers that are on your conduit. I'm just going to use a razor blade and just run it back and forth. And that will quickly get rid of your sticker. Next, you will want to sand all of your conduit. Now to sand this conduit, I'm using 60 grit sandpaper, but really any grit sandpaper will work fine. To make the painting process easier, you could build something like this. You will next put a screw then you'll get some string. Now the hole that you made in the conduit for the shop light chain, you're also going to use, and you're going to put a string around the hole and around the screw so you can hold the conduit onto this 2x2 up here so you can easily spray paint the conduit. So after you sanded and removed all your stickers, you may start the spray painting process. And I'm just using generic-ish quick color paint. Do light coats with passes. Now what you want to do is you want to measure your shop light. Now if your shop light is 4 feet long, you want to measure where your chain holes are, and then that's where your measure on center your brackets and where your metal post will be, if that makes any sense. Anyway, once you have those measurements down, what you want to do is figure out exactly dead center of your brackets and post will be, and you mark that out. Then you'll want to take a bracket and you'll want to put that somewhere on the center, like so. And then you mark that out. So now what you can do is you can just take your bracket, put it up against that line, and check to see if it's somewhere around center. So I'm using these flathead. If you notice this, see how the actual head of the screw is flat? That's called a flathead. This type of screw here, see how there's a flat blade? It can accept a flat blade. That's technically not called a flathead screwdriver. It's called a standard screwdriver. And this is actually called a flathead screw because the head's flat. So anyway, I'm using a hexagon driver, as you can see. And a hexagon bit, so it's basically a bolt, but it's a screw, not a bolt. Just because it has a bolt head does not mean it's a bolt. So you'll put the bracket where it's supposed to be. You'll find the general center of the hole, and then you will not drive the screw home. Do not drive the first screw home until you drive the second screw, and you can drive the second screw home right away. For the second bracket, I just measure 4 inches down, and that is where the top of the bracket should go. Now you want to find something, or you could measure from the top bracket down where you want your stopper screw or stopper bracket. So I'm just using a reciprocating saw blade, and once you figure out what you're going to use, you must always use this. You may not change, or you can just start measuring. Then what I do is I just use my screws that I used to put the brackets on, and I only put that on the center of that line, and I don't move up or down, and I put it on the center of this line. So now, this is ready to accept conduit. So here we have an ordinary piece of conduit. We have our 2 conduit clamps and a stopper screw. Now all we have to do is put this in, like so, the first clamp and the second clamp, and it bottoms out at the stopper screw. And as you can see, that's not coming off. Now, these brackets here do have play in them. They have room, so you can easily put it back in and take it out without scratching all the paint off. And there's not enough play, so where the light does not drastically lean. Just as an extra note, when you go to Home Depot, this is 1/2-inch conduit. These are 1/2-inch conduit clamps. And the screws are Everbuilt hex head slotted screws. And these are the screws that I used. Now, when you go to Home Depot, next to the 1/2-inch conduit that's 10 feet, there's going to be pre-cut conduit. You can just buy the pre-cut conduit, measure out 1 foot. Usually the Home Depot store will have a conduit bender in it. Measure out 1 foot, take the edge of the conduit bender, and put the edge of the conduit bender at 1 foot, and then you can bend your conduit. Make sure that once you start bending that you're consistent, or if you don't want to be consistent, you can have custom measurements. But this is a very simple system that looks fairly elegant, that I've never seen anybody else do, and it's a very cheap system as well. So now, you just want to fish your wire through the conduit until it comes out like so. So next, you'll want to take apart your shop light. This is a Lithonia Lighting T12 white shop light. So there's 2 screws on either end, like most shop lights. Take the screws off, and the cover should just come right off. So you want to start, and you want to go into the shop light, and you want to find these 2 caps. Now, this one here is the black wire. This one here is the white wire. So this shop light cost $11 from Home Depot. Now the ballast in here is actually a newer ballast than the older ones. I have 2 of the same Lithonia Lighting shop lights from Home Depot. They have different ballast in them. Now this seems to be a more rigid ballast. The case seems to be more rigid as well. And the ballast is, you can buy this shop light just for the ballast because the shop light's only $11. So the new one seems to be better, and it's quieter, just a little. If you put your air to it, it's quieter. And you'll also want to remove your ground. There is a ground screw that I unscrewed, and the ground should just come right out. Now with your wire stripped, you want to inspect the wire down here and make sure you did not strip any of your other wires. You only want to remove the orange insulation. Now with your wires stripped, you'll take your wires and twist them together. Then use a wire nut and twist your wire nut on top of the 2 wires. Now, if you have a solid wire or a solid core wire and a solid core wire, do not twist them together. Just put the wire nut right on top of them and twist the wire nut. If you have a solid core and a braided core, twist the braided core on the solid core and then twist the wire nut onto the wires. If you have a braided core and a braided core, twist the braided core and the braided core together, then twist the wire nut onto the wires. And remember one thing, with this setup, never skip the ground. Now, the ground wing nut is always going to be green, and it has a hole. Now, that hole is to allow the wire to come through the wing nut. You are never to use the ground wing nut on your white or your black wire. They are only to be used on ground, as the wire from your hot or neutral may come out of the wing nut, and it may touch the metal. It may short something, and if you touch it, you may get a little zap. So, with the cover back on the shop light, your anti-short bushing, and your wire running up to the conduit, and there should be an anti-short bushing up there as well, we're going to put the shop light up on the shop light chains. So now with the shop light on the chains, we're going to pull the wire through the conduit. So now your shop light can get powered